It's 6 o'clock on Thursday night and we are live tonight with pots and trowels from the garden here at Ivy Cottage. We're going to be having a wander around, look in the greenhouse, do a bit of planting. We're going to answer some of your questions as well. So please say hello to us, send us a message, and that's brought to you tonight with the support of Cobra Garden and Darlac. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels, and you're joining us tonight live from Ivy Cottage here in Lincolnshire. It's a bit of a cool night tonight. We're hoping for some sunshine, but we haven't got it, so it's overcast, a bit of a northeasterly wind, I think, bringing a bit of cool air off the North Sea, but never mind, it's dry and we're in the garden. So we're going to be with you for a while. We're going to be having a look around the garden, and don't forget, if you're watching us for the first time, you can always subscribe on YouTube because we put videos out on a weekly basis, and we've been doing it now for almost 4 years. So sometimes we're out and about visiting other people, or we're doing things in the garden, and we've got lots of projects to be doing here at Ivy Cottage over the summer and through the autumn because we're new here. We only moved here 6-7 months ago, so lots of things to be getting on with here. So please subscribe, please follow us, and if you've got any messages you want to send us tonight, then you can do, because we're going to answer some questions a little bit later on. But if you've got a question you want to ask, we can squeeze that in, I'm sure, and we'll give you a shout out as well. And I'm here doing the spouting. I've got the easy job tonight really, but behind the table, the cameras and the laptops there, we've got Jill and Sean. They're doing the technical stuff that's keeping everything on air. Hopefully you can see us. So please do, send us your messages, let us know that you're watching, and we'll say hello to you and hopefully give you some gardening advice. So we're going to start this evening with a quick look around our vegetable garden. Jill and I have been busy over the last couple of months making sure that we've got a new vegetable garden. So a little bit earlier this afternoon, when it was a little bit warmer, Sean and I popped into the vegetable garden for a look around. Well, welcome to our new garden, and this is the veg garden. You may have seen this. If you watch Pots and Trowels on a regular basis, you'll have seen the progress of the garden. If you're new tonight, then welcome, and please subscribe to our channel. We'd love you to watch us in the future. But this was just a bare piece of ground. There was a huge tree in the corner. You can see the stump there covered in ivy. It was a big ash tree. It was diseased, it was hollow, so it had to come down for safety reasons. And this is where we decided to make the vegetable garden, because it suddenly opened up to the light. It was a really dark, shady area. Unfortunately, the ground is full of roots and there's quite a lot of rubble. There was, I think at one point here, there's been a hard standing, so it was quite difficult to go down. So hence the reason Jill and I have been busy through the spring creating our raised beds from railway sleepers. We've got 4 in here. We wanted it to be a little bit ornamental at the same time. So we've done 4, and we're going to work on a rotation system, a 3-bed rotation system. So this bed here will be roots, so potatoes, parsnips, carrots. We've got the potatoes here. These are some earlies, another row coming through here. This is going to be parsnips, and they're not through yet, but they will be. They're a bit late going in. Carrots are coming through, beetroot. So that's the root crop. Over there we've got the legumes and the onions. We've still got the leeks to plant in there, and then we've got the brassicas on the bed at the back of me there. Cabbages, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, all of those lovely winter veg are going in there with a net on them to keep the pigeons off as well, because they are a real problem in the garden here. So we've put the net over there, and then this bed is going to be our asparagus bed long term. So we've already planted 10 asparagus, and as you can see here, they're already starting to shoot up. These have only been in about less than 3 weeks. We were quite late planting this year because of having to build the bed, so they're growing well. I've also got some courgettes in there to fill the gap, and salads, but the plan is long term to plant more asparagus in here, because Jill and I both love asparagus. She does some wonderful dishes with it. But these 3 beds here will rotate, so it will be 3 years before the potatoes get back to this, and that's going to help us with disease prevention and that type of thing. And then around the edge, Sean can get around the tree. This is the apple tree we potted. This is not an apple tree, sorry, it's a pear tree. We potted this a few weeks ago on Pots and Trowels. I've had it in a small pot for years and years. It was really pot bound, so we've put it into this bigger pot here, and it's already making nice growth. And look, we've got pears on it as well, so we should get a small crop of pears off it this year. So that's going to be our centerpiece. And then we're trying to keep it very informal really. Around the edge here we've got a mixture of fruit. So I've got a couple of stepovers, another apple tree that I'm going to prune to a shape, and then a few sweet peas, rhubarb, cut flowers, a mixture of all sorts. I'm trying to create that cottage garden feel, and of course it looks very empty at the minute, but by the end of the summer, when everything's growing and the flowers are growing, it will look fine. And then we wander around here as well, past our little makeshift. This is really simple to do. If you want to keep the brassicas clean so that the butterflies and the pigeons can't get onto them, then these are just 4-foot bamboo canes pushed into the ground with a small plant pot on the top. You could use yogurt pots, anything, and then we've draped over this butterfly net, so it means the butterflies can't get on, the pigeons can't get to them, so they will grow without any damage at all on them. So really easy to do. And then down here we've got the broad beans. I'm growing them this year. Instead of bamboo canes, I managed to get some of these lovely hazel sticks, which should last for quite a few years. And I just think they look really natural and fit in with the theme we're trying to create here. So they're going to wrap around there, and that make a lovely wigwam of runner beans through the summer. And then just a little collection of fruit in this bed here. So we've got a cordon red currant here. So this is one that I've just trained up a stem. I will shorten these back later in the summer. So what it will do when it's established is make a column of growth and have the red currants on. And there's just a few on there, but it's a young plant. So in the next year or two, it will get more. A little dwarf raspberry there. We've got a gooseberry here, a lovely red one, Hinamaki red, which is a really sweet one. And then black currant there, which has got some fruit on. It's one I've already been growing in a pot, and just a short row of autumn fruiting raspberries. So we'll get the crop off those in this first year as well. And strawberries. I've got this raised bed here. So this little bed here that has got a cover that will go over it. So that will produce a little crop of strawberries on there. It's got a veggie pod, that is, and they're really good for salads and veg in these veggie pods when the lid's on there. And the all-important compost heap came with us from North Yorkshire. And I've been filling this with rubbish out the garden as we've been pruning, clearing the beds. It's all been going through the shredder, chopping it up, mixing it with grass cuttings, and I can actually feel the heat through this. It's not a pretty thing, and it's a pity we've not got smelly vision, because I can actually smell this. It smells a bit ripe. It's the grass in there, but I hope you're not going to steam up, Sean, when we open this up, because I'm expecting this to be quite warm. So here we go, 1, 2, 3. Ah, look at that. The steam rises from the compost heap that's settled. This was full only yesterday to the top, and that is really, really warm. In fact, literally 10 minutes ago, I pushed in this thermometer, and we can see there that already it is, that's the centigrade, it is
55, is that?
Well, a bit more, I think, nearly, yeah, 50, about 56, 58, 60s there, 50s there. So that is going to rot down really quickly. I think what we need to do is get a piece of ham, wrap it in foil, bury it in there, leave it for a couple of days, and we can have lovely succulent ham. So I'm going to close that up.
We'll have to ask production catering.
See if we can get it, exactly. So that's it. That's our little garden coming together, and we'll do regular updates through the summer as the crops start to develop. Well, we'll be giving you updates on the veg plot and showing you how it progresses later on in the summer. And the compost should hopefully be ready to take out the compost bin by the end of the summer, so we can spread that on the garden, and then we'll be able to fill it with all the autumn leaves and all the autumn vegetable waste, so that we can make more compost that we're ready by next spring. So the theory is we'll get sort of 2 loads or 2 crops of compost out of the bin each year. So what we're going to do now is we're going to answer some of the questions that have been sent in to us on YouTube and on Facebook. Jerry and Ali have sent us a few questions in. They're new to gardening, so we've got a couple for them to answer. And the first one is, when is the best time to water plants? In particular, tomatoes, beetroot and courgettes. Ali tends to water in the evening. Jerry fluctuates between morning and evening what do they prefer, and also how much should you give them when you water them? Well, you can water both morning and evening, so they're really good times. What we try to avoid is watering through the middle of the day, especially when the sun's shining. If it's cool and overcast, it's not a problem, but normally in the summer we'd say do it nice and early in the morning, and then we do it, or otherwise we do it sort of late evening. I like to water in the evening in one respect, because it means that, especially if you're watering outside, the plants get charged up with water overnight and they then stand well over the next day. But you mentioned tomatoes. I always try to water my tomatoes in the morning for the simple reason tomatoes don't like to be wet overnight. So if you splash the foliage, then it can lead to fungal infections on the leaf. So I tend to do my tomatoes in the morning, but everything else you can do morning or evening. And as for how much to give them, well, it depends how much they need. There's no set rule. You've got to get to know your plants. If you're growing tomatoes, for example, in pots, you can sometimes feel the way to the pot. If the compost looks dry or feels dry when you push your finger in, give them a drink. But what you don't want to do is overwater them. They don't want to be in wet, soggy conditions. So water as and when they need it. And the aim is to try and keep the compost as moist as you can at all times without being soaking wet through. Another one from Jerry and Ali is about courgettes, tomato and beetroot that they're growing, and they're growing them in wooden planters with holes in the bottom for drainage, and they want to know whether they should be positioned in direct sun or partial shade. Well, certainly the courgettes and the tomatoes are better in full sun. They need the warmth of the sun. They grow so much better in sunny weather, so I would put those in the sun. As for the beetroot, well, beetroot's quite versatile in that respect. It will grow in partial shade or full sun. So if you've got more than one plant and you can put one in part shade, that's fine. Otherwise, they will all be good in the full sun. Trudy Webster has sent a question in saying, "Hi Martin, I've planted my sweet peas in a large pot in a tripod shape with manure and good peat-free compost 2 weeks ago. I fed them with tomato feed and they're growing lovely, but they're starting to get the typical beige mark leaves at the bottom of the plant. How can I avoid that happening?" Well, I think you've done everything right. You know, it sounds like it's good compost. You've given them the manure that's going to hold the moisture and the nutrients in there, and they're growing. I think partly it's natural. Sweet peas have a habit of doing this, and certainly the ones we've got in the garden that are only about 2 feet tall and just starting to produce flower buds, the bottom leaves are now starting to go yellow, and they do that. It's part of the natural aging process. As the plant's growing, all the nutrients are diverted to the top of the plant, which is where they're needed, and the bottom leaves aren't needed as much. So you get this paling of the leaf, and eventually it'll turn yellow and fall off. So there's not an awful lot you can do to avoid it. Maybe in the early stages you've got to make sure the plant isn't stressed by being too dry or anything like that, running out of nutrients, but it tends to happen. So I wouldn't worry. As long as they're growing and flowering, that's the main thing. And then last question of this session, we've got Harriet, who's had problems with grubs inside her apples last year. All the apples on the tree have got these little maggoty grubs in there, and she wants to know what they are and how she can avoid it next year. Well, you've got codling moth grubs, and this is a little moth that flies around at this time of the year, and this is really quite a timely question because now is the time to do something about it. The moths are flying around, they're looking for the small apples as they develop on the tree, and the same moth also affects pear trees as well. They lay their eggs on the little developing apples, and then the maggots hatch out. Well, they're actually caterpillars. They go into the centre and they eat inside the core of the fruit, and then when they've had enough they come out and drop to the ground. But of course by then the damage is done. Now, we don't like to spray anything that we're going to eat in our garden, but what you can use is a pheromone trap, and this is a pheromone trap. You'll get them from garden centres, you can buy them online. It looks like a little plastic tent that you hang in your tree, and you put into it a sticky paper like this. So there we've got a sticky fly paper that slides in, and then you'll get in the pack this little pheromone, which is here, which is just a little capsule with the scent of the female moth in there. And what you do is pop that inside on the sticky paper without getting sticky yourself. Close it all up because we've got to make sure that birds can't get into there, little birds. So fold there so the birds can't get in. You hang that in your tree, and then as the male moths are flying around looking for a female to mate with, they think they're all in there. So they fly in there to investigate, get stuck on the sticky paper, catches the male moth. So they can't breed with the female moths. And it works really well. And we used them in our old garden for several years, and we got rid of all the problems we had with codling moths in there. So it's worth investing in that. That will last about 6 weeks. You'll get 2 sticky papers and 2 refills. So usually about mid-July, change over, and that will then take you through to the end of the season, and it will keep them nice and clean. So I'm going to walk now through to the garden, and what we're going to do is we're going to put these in the tree, and we've also got some herbs to plant. So what we've done in the garden here, we haven't got room to plant a traditional orchard, we just haven't got the space to do it, but I wanted to include quite a few trees. So we've got 15 mixed apples and pear trees growing here, and I'm going to grow them as what we call a cordon. This is a vertical cordon. Normally cordons are at 45 degrees, but this is another way of growing them. It's a very simple way. They will be grown basically as a column. These were only planted a matter of 3 or 4 weeks ago, quite late in the season to be fair. And these were bare root, but we kept them nice and cool. They'd been in a cold store while we got the ground prepared. And once the ground was prepared, which I'll tell you about in a second or two, then we can then make sure that these will come into leaf now. As you can see, they're just starting to come into leaf. So they're going to be absolutely fine. And what you need to do with your pheromone trap when you've made it up is just either hang it in the tree, and one of these will protect several trees. This one will protect all of these, and it will protect sort of an average sized garden. So if you've got 3 or 4 trees dotted around the garden, one pheromone trap will do the job for you. So back to the herb garden. We've created our fruit walk, which is going to fill out, and then we'll show you how we prune those later on in the year. We've got a bed in front of it, and we wanted to plant something in it related to the vegetable garden. So we decided on putting herbs in there. So as you can see, we've already started to fill it with a mixture of different herbs, some culinary, some more ornamental like the lavender, but they've all got that sort of veg garden feel to it. Now, the bed that they're in, the soil is absolutely rubbish. This was grass here. When we took the grass off, 2 or 3 inches down, we hit concrete rubble, bricks, old tarmac. And I think in a past life, this was probably a hard standing because it's the same under the rest of the vegetable garden. So Jill bought me a new hammer, a new pickaxe for this, not a hammer, it was a pickaxe. Nice little early Christmas present. And I spent 2 days getting it sorted out. And as you can see, it's still quite stony in there and very well drained, but that's ideal for herbs because they will grow in quite poor soil. But what I have done just to improve it is I've already spread some of this. This is plant grow mulch, which is a byproduct of anaerobic digesters, which are used to make energy, electricity. And this is what comes out of it. It's maize and rye that's been in there as the anaerobic digester works. Brilliant as a mulch, but also as a soil conditioner. So we've spread that around, already worked some in, and then we can plant in. What that will do is just give them a bit of a head start. So it's literally digging out the hole. As you can see, it's quite stony soil in there, but once they get their roots down, they will be absolutely fine. This is here a little oregano here, which will grow about a foot tall and have lovely pink flowers later on in the summer. Great for attracting bees and pollinators into the garden. So I'm just going to pop that into the hole so it's at the level with the soil, backfill it round with some of the soil there, and then of course the all important, we need to firm it in. I like to use my foot, you can use your hands, but this needs to be firm in the soil, and then just finish off. Make sure, we want to leave it nice and neat and tidy. And there's a few more to plant, but we'll plant those later because you don't want to be watching me plant half a dozen herbs. And what we need to do, even though these will naturally grow in quite dry conditions when they're established, we need to get the roots out into the soil. So I'm going to give them a water in, and I'm going to make sure the water goes all the way round it. And the idea of this is it's not just a sprinkle. I'm giving them a good soak in. because we want the water to soak down right the way through the root ball and below to the soil below. And you can see that that is just going in like a sponge. So that water is now draining right the way down. And what will happen is I won't water that again now for maybe 3-4 days, even a week. And what it will mean is the roots will then grow down in search of water. And that's almost training the roots to search for water. If you were to water that every day for the next 2 weeks, the roots haven't got to search. They know that water's there all the time for them. So make them work a little bit for it. So, but if you think it's wilting, give it a drink, but otherwise let it work and find that moisture. One more question from Jerry and Ali is on beetroot. And they've bought some beetroot plants and they want to know how to plant them, but also how far apart to plant them in the garden. Now Sean's just putting the camera on the tripod. He gets tired arms now. He's getting a bit old for carrying heavy cameras around. So I've grown beetroot this way, Jerry. I don't buy the plants, which you can buy in garden centres. The problem you can have with buying plants of beetroot and carrots is these are root vegetables that grow into the soil, and if the roots are damaged, sometimes you get a forked root on there. Beetroot do transplant better than carrots, having said that. If you're planting them in the garden, just take them out of the container nice and carefully and then make a hole with a little trowel, and you want to plant them so that they're at the same depth that they're growing in their little containers. That's really important. Don't plant them really any deeper. And I would space them about every 2 or 3 inches. You've got to allow just enough room for those beets to grow, the bulb there, the swollen root to fill out. So 2 to 3 inches gives them enough room to make a nice small beetroot. You don't want them too big. The other way of doing it, and something you might consider next year in your raised beds, is to just sow them directly in. And it's really good because you can do it little and often. These little seedlings here were only sown a couple of weeks ago, so they'll germinate really quickly at this time of the year, and there's no root disturbance. And once they get to this height, I need to thin them out. So again, they've got that couple of inches in between them so that the roots can grow. And then in another sort of 6 weeks time, we can enjoy those and we can be picking the beetroot. So really easy to do. Get them in, water them in, and you'll enjoy the beetroot later on in the year. Now, as well as growing in the vegetable garden, I love to grow in the greenhouse. I love my tomatoes and cucumbers and all the plants that we grow in there. So earlier, I took Sean in there to show him what I've been up to. Well, as you can see, this is the back garden, and the back garden is still very, very much work in progress. We've been concentrating on the front, which is where the vegetable garden is, and we're at the moment putting beds and shrubs in. So we will move into here. We've done quite a lot of clearing, believe it or not. We've taken lots of shrubs out, overgrown. We've raised the canopy of those conifers over there, and we're about ready to start setting it out for the beds.
Question.
You
what
can.
happened to the facade? Did it stay?
The facade, well, Sean, the facade that we pruned, we did decide had to go in the end. So that was over there against the fence right at the other side, and it was just too big. So we thought we can't reduce it. So that has gone. We will plant another one somewhere and keep it under control. But what we're going to do now is just pop into the greenhouse. This is the greenhouse that we put up. Do excuse the building site here. Cement mixers, blocks. One of the jobs I'm doing is building a wall around the oil tank. So that's in a few weeks' time. We won't do a pots and trowels on that, but the greenhouse is only went up last autumn. It's going to have some proper paving put down, but these are just temporary. But it's a great working area for me, and already we're starting to get plants growing in here. So this is my bench where I start things off, and I always like my little ornamentals as well. So I've got some lovely pelargoniums on here and streptocarpus there. That's one of the Dibley's famous streptocarpus. So I've got my little ornamental plants in there, but then I'm starting lots of veg off in here. You know, pea shoots, we're cutting these, Jill's mixing them in with salads. These are the leeks that are going to be planted into the veg garden. A few more salads in there, and this is a great little pea. If you haven't got room to plant peas in a vegetable garden, this one is called Half Pint, and it's perfect for growing in containers like this. So this is just a pot with probably 20 peas pushed directly into the compost. About 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks maybe, these were planted. And the great thing is they only grow to 6 to 8 inches tall, so 15 to 20 centimetres tall. but they produce full-size pods of delicious sweet peas. So
Time to plant one of those now?
oh, you can do these. The idea is if you're doing them in pots like this, Sean, do a pot and then a month later sow another pot and then another one. So you could start in April, finish sowing your peas in July, and then you'll be eating them right the way through the summer until about September time. So absolutely, now is the time to keep sowing all of these things in there. And then on this side, oh, mustn't forget the strawberries. I saw Sean on the strawberries there. This is I'm growing strawberries as well as the ones outside in the veggie pod. I'm growing some in these hanging baskets, which are great because they've got a little reservoir in there. So if you're going away for the weekend, give them a good drink and that reservoir will feed them and water them for those few days when you're not around. So really good idea to grow them in pots. And of course the slugs can't get them when they're in a hanging basket like that. Others in hanging baskets, I've got these tomatoes. These are Tumbling Tom, just starting to flower as you can see at the top there. I don't know whether Sean can see that. So these are a cherry tomato. This is the red Tumbling Tom.
I think you planted those on pots and trowels.
You did, we did, yes, and you did some tomatoes as well from seed, didn't you, on a time lapse, which was brilliant. So yeah, we planted these back in about second week in March, and here we are now, 1st of June. So they've made decent sized plants, and this one doesn't need any pinching out or anything. You just let it grow naturally, and it will produce dozens and dozens of lovely little sweet red cherry tomatoes. The other tomatoes we sowed in the middle of March were these here that we've got in. So I've just planted 6 in the bed. Now these are directly into the soil. This is a variety here called Tigerella, which is a stripy tomato. Really, really tasty one. And you can see now they're growing. They've got their first truss on there. So they'll set, and then I'll take them up to the top of the cane, and we should get a truss is the bunch of flowers just here, and there's another one forming there. So I'm hoping to get 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 trusses on these plants before we stop them in early August time, and we'll get loads and loads of beautiful tomatoes from them.
Do you need to do anything with those at this point, or do you just let them keep going up?
No, it's a good point, Sean. We do. I mean, these are the sort that need support. Tumbling Tom in the basket, you let it do its own thing. This one has to be tied to a cane, and we train it as a single stem. So you can see here, I'm using a soft string just to tie it on there. So that keeps it nice and straight. And then in between the main stem and the leaf, we get these growths, side shoots. And what we need to do is to take those out. And I've left this one purposely for tonight, and it's just a case of snap them out like that. Off it comes. And there's some little ones down there lower. So I'm going to take those out as well. They go on the compost bin, or you could actually take a cutting if you wanted another tomato plant, but I've got plenty. They're going to now be fed once a week because they're flowering with a high potash tomato fertiliser right the way through until the end of the season. And, you know, by August, they will be literally as tall as me. So that's 6'8". Yes.
For those of you watching in black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And then at the back here, I'm trying some melons. Never had a great success with melons. This is a mango melon. This is a new variety. So I've got 3 melons going here. And again, these will be tied to the cane, and we've got the flowers on. So I'm hoping soon that we'll get some little melons developing, and then a cucumber in the corner. So we've got cucumbers just starting to form on there now. I've got another one to sneak in a pot. Jill doesn't know about this yet because she said only do 1 cucumber, because this will produce probably 15, 20 cucumbers through the season. But I love cucumbers, so I've got one I'm going to plant in a pot and sneak it in just here in this piece of ground here, and she'll not notice that one. So yeah, it's all happening here in the greenhouse. It's a place I can escape from the washing up, come and potter around and do lots and lots of things.
Can I ask you, have you got the citrus here?
Oh, I have, yeah, just there.
Somebody mentioned citruses and they said they've had struggling to get them to fruit.
These struggled a bit, I must admit, in the winter because they got really cold, but they will stand it down to sort of 5-6 degrees, but anything colder than that. So these had a period of that. Set them back a little bit, but they're fine. The secret with them is they need a high potash feed through the summer months. So this one is a calamondin, and you can see this one is just starting to flower. And they are, in fact, just forming into the little fruits there. So they do need pollinating, so let the insects in to pollinate them. This one is a lime, and this one has been full of flower. If you were here a couple of weeks ago, it was full, and we can see we're going to get a good crop on there. Some of these will fall off, there's too many there, but we'll probably get 3 or 4 in a cluster there. That's one that's started a little bit earlier. So that one, although it's struggled a little bit, is now growing okay. And this one here, which is flowering and producing fruit, is an orange. So if you've got one that isn't producing any flowers, don't prune it, because pruning will stimulate strong growth, and you need the older wood that produces the flowers, and feed it with the high potash, and it should eventually flower. They often flower late winter, early spring, so just be patient, but certainly don't prune it until you're getting some flower on there. So there you go, that's what we've been up to in the greenhouse. And remember, don't mention the other cucumber to Jill if you see her, because shh, shh, shh. Right, oh, Jill's there. So a few more questions just to end this session with you tonight. So these have come in, I think on Facebook probably earlier on. This is from Catherine Mays. Catherine's got a patch of striped grass which normally grows profusely in the garden. Last year she planted alliums within the large clump, thinking the vivid colour would enhance the paleness of the grass. Good idea. Unfortunately this year the striped grass is very poor, in fact hardly any at all. Would it be anything to do with the alliums? Well, I don't think it is at all, Catherine. I mean, most grasses are fairly tough, and there's certainly nothing in the allium that is going to affect the growth. And I've seen them, similar planting combinations like that, and it works really, really well. So it's a good idea. I think it's the grass that's the problem, and I think it's been caused by the weather last winter. We had a really cold winter, just those sudden cold spells that suddenly came, and it's done lots of damage to lots of plants. So I think it's either the cold that we had in December or January that's weakened it when it was still in growth, hadn't gone into its winter dormancy, or it's probably the fact that it's been wet at some point. And again, we had a wet end of winter into spring, was very wet indeed, and lots of plants struggled and the roots have rotted a little bit. So it doesn't sound like it's dead, but it sounds like it's struggling a little bit. So hopefully over this summer it will perk up a little bit more. Maybe just, you know, fork around it a little bit to make sure there's air down to the roots. If the ground is dry now, maybe give it a drink, because if the roots have been damaged by the wet or the cold, they're going to be struggling. So you're probably going to have to give it a little bit of TLC, a bit of light, weak dilute feed. Something like seaweed fertilizer is a good, almost a tonic to build it up, and hopefully it will bounce back, and then in the future you'll be able to get that wonderful combination of the stripy grass and the alliums. Chris Corduroy, message came in on YouTube. I have a lovely Brunner Jack Frost. Can I lift it and split it for more plants? And if so, when is the best time to do it? Well, Brunner is a really interesting plant, and Jack Frost is one of my favourites. It's a sort of woodlandy ground cover plant, likes a bit of shade ideally, spreads, and it's got a mottled leaf with these lovely blue flowers, forget-me-not blue sprays of flowers. Till about this time of the year, they're pretty much just about going over now, aren't they? And this is a Brunner, but this one isn't Jack Frost. This one here is Mr. Morse, which is the white flowered version of Jack Frost, and it's got exactly the same foliage on there. You can see here we've got this mottled leaf that looks like it's got frost on it, and these little white flowers that have almost gone. What we do with them in the garden is we snip the flowers off, and that just helps the foliage carry on looking good for the rest of the summer, so you get that ground cover. They do divide very well. This is a young plant that's going to be planted in our borders, and already this one, I'm looking into it and I'm thinking I could actually almost split that into 2 halves like that. You could see that almost makes 2 plants, but now isn't the time to do it. The time to do this would be in the dormant season. So you could either do it in the autumn when it's dying down, or early next spring, just as it's starting into growth, sort of late February, early March time. Lift the clump up and divide it. And if it's a big established clump, you can probably get 7 or 8 new plants out of that, and it will be perfect. So yep, that will work really, really well with your Brunner there. And we're having a few technical issues at the back there, folks. And the last question from Andrea. Everything's fine. I suspect something's not right. Andrea Bradley, one of our very faithful viewers, right from the very beginning, Andrea, and she comes to see us at the shows. So Andrea and David, hello. Andrea would like some recommendations for plants in a new bed which is predominantly south facing on clay, and it's quite windy too. I know this is a new garden, a new build you've moved to, so soil can sometimes be a problem anyway with builder's rubble, but taking that to one side, prepare the ground well, mix in some organic matter so that it opens the clay up a little bit, helps the drainage in there. And then really it's sky's the limit, because most things will grow perfectly well in clay, but they just sometimes take a little bit longer to establish because of that sort of sticky soil at certain times of the year. But I've just made a quick list of things that I've grown in heavy clay where we've lived in the past, and they've thrived. And this is just a few of many. You know, all the different Berberis shrubs will be great in clay. Cistus, Philadelphus, which is just about to come into flower. Roses of the species and shrub roses will all grow in it. Hydrangeas are great in clay if you want trees. Crab apples love clay. You know, all the malus really do well in clay. Spireas, viburnum, the list goes on. And then perennials, things like Brunera will grow in it, echinacea, the herbaceous geraniums, rudbeckias, begonias, alchemilla mollis, all of those will grow. So pretty much anything will grow in there except for shade loving plants. So avoid anything that needs shade, but if it's a sun loving plant and you prepare the soil, it will grow really well. So good luck with that, and look forward to hearing an update on the border when you've planted it. And that's it, I think. We've got no more questions in.
Can I just say one thing, Mark? Because we've had a few people just join us very, very last second here.
Right.
Should we show them around the greenhouse or the veg plot? Or again?
We can do. We
Those
what?
who didn't see it earlier?
To have a quick wander in?
I mean, either a wander in or just the video we did.
Yeah, we could have a wander in. Do you want to have a quick wander in? Right, okay, yes. And of course, if you have had problems joining us, this is all going to go onto Facebook anyway. So as soon as we've finished, Sean's been recording it and he will post the whole video back on Facebook. So you'll be able to watch it from the start. So by, you know, give it half an hour after we finish, you can watch it from the beginning. But we will do this as a little bit of a bonus extra. So the vegetable garden is here. I feel like I've already done this once today already. This was when Jill and I moved here, the back end of last year, was just a little lawn here, and there was a huge ash tree, and you can probably see there that the stump, which is about 8 to 10 feet tall, unfortunately it had got ash dieback, and it was also rotten in the middle at the big branches, so it was unsafe, so we had to remove it. But it made this area now that we've got as a vegetable garden usable, because it was in shade for most of the day because of the tree. Lots of roots underneath it, and also lots of rubble from previous uses going back in time, when it was outbuildings or whatever. So it was quite difficult to grow in it. So we decided to lift all the turf and grub out the shrubs around the side, some old overgrown shrubs that had been in a long, long time, and open it up and create the raised beds out of sleepers. So that's exactly what we've done. We've put 4 in. We want it to be slightly ornamental, so we've sort of made a little cutout there in the centre and got a pear tree as a centrepiece. We've gravelled the paths. We took up an old concrete path and we put some nice crunchy gravel down there, and we've just started to plant them within the last few weeks. So we're a little bit late. Certain things we'd started off, things like the courgettes and the onions and the beans, we'd started off in the greenhouse, and we've been sowing carrots and beetroot and parsnips, and everything is springing up, including my asparagus. Love asparagus and miss our old asparagus bed when we were up in Yorkshire, so we put 10 asparagus plants in there. They've all come through. It's going to be another year or probably 2 years before we can be cutting them, but it's worth the wait for asparagus. And then around the edge we've planted a mixture of fruits, some soft fruits. So we've got raspberries, we've got gooseberries, there's a black currant in there, and then we've got rhubarb over there, sweet peas going up a wigwam, just starting to flower. So we want that to feel cottagey, so we're going to mix in a few flowers as well. And then of course this side of the path, which takes us to the gate, we've planted a row of cordon apple trees that are going to be grown as vertical cordons. So I'm going to let them probably get another couple of feet tall, and then they will feather out, we will shorten them in. So it will almost make a hedge. We're going to call it a fredge, fruit hedge, fredge, I think that's a word, and that will be just full of fruit in years to come, and then underplanted along this border with a mixture of herbs. So we've already done some herb planting, so if you do watch from the beginning again, you'll get to see everything that we've been planting. Still got a few to plant, which I'll do in the morning, and that is it. So borders, if I don't know whether Sean can see, just on this piece, just this was just the lawn here. So what we've done is there was a little raised mound here. I think there was a tree because we dug an old tree stump out here. So we've just made a little dry stone wall just to hold back the bank, and then we've created some borders around it, and we've planted a mixture of herbaceous perennials and shrubs and evergreens in there. So they were literally only planted last weekend, so that is all very new. So they're being watered in, and hopefully by the end of summer we'll have made quite a bit of growth, and we'll show you what it looks like later on. So that's it. So a little bit of bonus footage there as I wander back to my little seat here. So for those that have been with us from the beginning, thank you very, very much for watching. Those that have joined us late, then remember you can watch all of this on Facebook. So Sean is going to post everything that we've done tonight on Facebook, so you'll be able to watch it from the start. So we're also having a look around the greenhouse, showing you what we're growing in there, and we've answered quite a lot of questions through the evening on fruit, flowers and vegetables. So thank you for watching. I do apologise for that slight technical issue for those that couldn't get on. We will be back next week in the garden doing something. Please keep sending us all your messages, but until we see you again, thank you very much. And remember, subscribe on YouTube, and then you'll get to see everything we've done. So from me and Sean and Jill, who are behind the cameras, thank you for watching.